How seriously and in what ways are tax cutbacks and the economy affecting you?
So that's a great question. First, I indicated separately the impact of sales tax, obviously, and the fact that sales tax revenues are down has a unique impact to our city. But I think your question is more on the state level, and I'll give you some examples right now. The governor's budget correction proposal. We all know that's what we're dealing with. For those of you who don't know, we're looking at a $4 billion mid-year budget gap. And that's huge. And that means that in order to solve that, there's going to be pain inflicted on things that we all care about. I don't think there's any way to solve that size of a problem without understanding that reality. But White Plains gets hit tremendously in that. Our school district, under the governor's proposal, and again, my hope is we'll be able to mitigate some of that, would take about a $1.4 million hit under the governor's proposal for deficit reduction this year. The city gets a $470,000 hit under the governor's proposal in its AIM funding. And the unique thing about that is that the city is one of maybe 10 localities statewide that gets hit because it's very unfair. It's based on your budget year. Most communities have already received their AIM funding, but because the city's budget, White Plains' budget, is July 1st to June 30th, it hasn't received all its AIM funding. It's one of about 10 communities in the state that are like that have a different budget year, and because they want to take back some of our mid-year funding. It's unfortunate, but that's just a budgetary reality that we face. Those are just examples right now of things we're confronting that may exacerbate some of the problems that this city faces economically. But we're not unique, obviously. The reality is that the state is looking at hitting many other entities. The only unique aspect of it for White Plains is, like I said, we're one of only 10 communities statewide or so that have a different budget cycle that allows them to take from us mid-cycle, while others have already got all their funding. So, yes.
Has any of the stimulus money been earmarked for White Plains, and if so, how much, and what will you be using it for?
I don't have all the numbers, and obviously one of the dilemmas is, I'm the incoming mayor, so I don't know all the efforts they made in order to maximize stimulus money opportunities. I have expressed a little bit of frustration because one of the things that I am inheriting, which is a tremendously large hit, is our landfill. Our Gedney landfill and DEC have been an issue for literally 20 years or more. And that is a major, major cleanup responsibility the city has. And because we have been delayed in moving on it, it is not a stimulus-ready project, and we're looking at a project that at its low end is probably going to cost the city $50 million. That's low end. So we're talking about a potentially major expense, a long-term capital expense that I would have much preferred being able to have the opportunity to seek stimulus monies for, and unless stimulus monies are extended, that will be very difficult. And again, I don't know what the federal government's going to do because obviously there's some controversy about whether to continue or not the stimulus program once it expires. But one of the things I intend to do, if it does continue in any manner, is try to make sure that when we have big capital projects like that we have them project ready enough so that we can really be seeking some stimulus help. And the other thing is separate from stimulus money. I intend to work very collaboratively with our Nita Lowey in the House of Representatives, who's a good friend of mine, try to maximize what we can get. Senator Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, I know them both, and intend to try to leverage whatever we can from our federal government. It is a time where no government can afford not to be collaborative with other branches of government, because we are all facing the same difficulties, and the best way to mitigate taxpayer burdens is working collaboratively, whether it's with the county, whether it's with a neighboring community, and our school district. At the end of the day, we can't have separate fiefdoms anymore, because if we do, that is added cost to taxpayers. We got to figure out how to work together to mitigate costs. Yes?
Mayor-elect, you mentioned, the good news is we're gaining Reader's Digest to White Plains and 500 and some odd people. The bad news is we're losing 800 of Starwoods to go over the border to Connecticut. I know it's a difficult economic year and challenges with the state and with the city, but how do we try to keep and attract more businesses to the White Plains area to grow our economy?
It's a great question. And first, let me say, the bad news out of Starwoods is they are leaving. The good news, it's not till 2012, which buys us a fair amount of time to deal with that situation. And I will say that one of the big frustrations that we felt locally here in White Plains, but in Westchester County as a whole, and really in the Hudson Valley region, is that the economic incentives coming out of Connecticut right now are incredible and very enticing, and the state and the county just do not have the ability to compete with the inducements, at least at a dollar-for-dollar basis. And I think that has created a lot of what happened with Starwoods, quite frankly. I only wish that as a city we could have done things. It just couldn't happen, and the state and the county just could not compete with the inducements that Connecticut is offering right now. So we have to be creative. I mean, we have to. One thing about White Plains is we have to. We have an incredibly special location. We have the largest reverse commute from New York City of any community in this region, and there's a reason, because White Plains is so central. One of the missions that I have, and obviously during this economic downturn it's difficult, but when the economy picks up, is to really do some work at our train station. That is an important entryway into our city. I think if we're able to highlight that and make it a very attractive place, we're going to make the city that much more attractive as an entryway. We have to think about the things that we can do, not what we can't do. Unfortunately, one thing we can't do is come up with our own economic inducements that are going to match the state of Connecticut. That I can't do. But what I can do is try to make sure that as I plan my future for this city and our future for this city, that we do it in a way that ensures we're going to highlight our economic vibrancy and why we should be a place that anybody who wants to have successful business wants to come to. And I think that we already have the location. It's more now about making sure that the entryways and that the systems in the city, like I said, building department, the parking department, things like that, our public safety department, recognize that they also play an integral role, and how they deal with people and the choices they make are going to have an impact on whether we're perceived as a business-friendly community or not. So if we work on all those things and then work on our plan to make sure that it's focused on highlighting our vibrancy, I think that we're going to be able to do a lot of very good things without necessarily being able to compete with economic inducements. There'll still be some inducements. Clearly the state does provide some inducements, but dollar for dollar the state and the county inducements have not, at least in the recent future, been able to match the state of Connecticut, which has been incredibly aggressive, as many of you may know, in its economic inducement packages.